you're new here to know about Google Sandbox, I have the answer to all of your questions. Hey everyone, today I'm gonna talking about Google Sandbox. Google's John Miller answered why new content sometime pop into the search result ranking high, then drop off. John explained what Google does with new content and how that explains the sandbox and honeymoon phenomena that the SEO community has been talking about for decades. The Google Sandbox. In the early 2000s, some publishers noticed that new content sometimes took months or even longer before it started ranking. It seemed as if new content was not being trusted and not allowed to rank. Matt Cutts asked for some URLs investigated and reported back to the webmaster community that Google was not preventing the content from ranking, but that an algorithm was working as it was supposed to work. So far, that explanation was cryptic. I never understood how the answer could be seen as contradictory or cryptic. To put some context into the beginning of the Google Sandbox theory, it was created during the time when publishers would promote new sites with directly links and reciprocal linking campaigns. That was the standard procedures, and in hindsight, it's painfully obvious that it's stung. But back then, everyone was doing it, and then as now, people tend to believe that if everybody is doing it, then it must be okay. Some obviously to them, if they are doing everything right, it must be Google unfairly blocking new websites from ranking. The Google's honeymoon theory is that Google will rank new content at the top of the search results in order to test it to see if users like it. If the click-through rate and bounce back rate indicate that users don't like the new content, then Google will taper off the traffic. This question is specific to the Google honeymoon theory. The person asking the question make a reference to user behavior, which seem to be a reference to the idea that Google is testing how users respond and de-ranking the page if users don't like it enough. Why does ranking and traffic taper off to new pages? The person asking the question is asking about new web pages. Although the person doesn't make reference to the Google honeymoon theory, the nature of the question implies that this is what they are asking about, and Miller's make an explicit reference to it later on. Google has systems that make assumptions about content. John Miller's answer seemed to confirm that there is a honeymoon period with new content, but keep reading because the answer reveals more says that. Miller said that the part of the judgment has to do with what the rest of the site is like. This is where Miller refutes the existence of a Google Sandbox and a Google honeymoon for new pages and explain what is going on. In the SEO world, this is sometimes called kind of like a sandbox where Google is keeping things back to prevent new pages from showing up. This is not the case. Or some people call it like the honeymoon period where new content come out and Google really love it and tries to promote it. And it's again not the case that we're explicitly trying to promote new content and demote new content. It's just we don't know and we have to make assumptions, and then sometimes those assumptions are right and nothing really changed over time. Sometimes things settle down a little bit lower, sometimes a little bit higher. What you see is not always what is there. Sometimes you unwittingly invent an explanation for what they see, which might be something completely random with no explanation, or might have a cause that is not perceived. It's like the sick blind man who touched a different part of an elephant and explained what is from just the one part they have perceived. According to the psychology today, humans are biased to themselves as doing a good job and sometimes unable to see the faults that are leading to a negative outcome. And that's very much like the origin of the sandbox theory, where the common practices of the site promotion were of a very low quality, but most publishers didn't perceive it that way. It's good to have someone like John Miller who is on the side inside of the Google explain why we see this and what that happened. It helps expose how ideas like the Google Sandbox and how honeymoon do nothing to explain what is really going on.